Well, it is Sunday, and I've come back from an incredibly good mass, and I have to say that was the best. Red mass was. I think it's for St. Thomas More. Yeah, I think so. It was a really good mass today, and hey, and I hope everyone's having a good Sunday. Wherever you are watching this from, we've got stuff to get into. Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, did an interview with Shannon Bream on Fox News this morning. I think this is someone, I forgot who said this is aspiration. I totally forgot until later when I remembered, oh yeah, I want to react to that. So without further, we're going to go to this, and this is on the Fox News website. Oh, shout out to them. And the whole title is Walz tries to downplay laws he signed granting benefits to illegals in Minnesota, not the VP's position. All right.
Vice presidential nominee, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Governor, great to have you with us on Fox News Sunday.
This is 15 minutes long, so
Great to be with you, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I want to pick up where Alexis left off there in the Middle East, because you were asked in the debate the other night a question about whether or not you would support a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran. You didn't really get to an answer on that. So this administration continues to call for Israel to moderate its...
He didn't. And Vance schooled him on that. Vance said, listen, it's what Israel wants. Who, personally, I think, I'm not sure if we should support. I mean, if Iran is the one who strike, then yes. But if it's Israel, then it's they're doing, unless Iran really retaliates, where it's like a humanitarian crisis, then that's where I think we should, because we've supported Israel a lot. I think we've supported Israel way too much in some instances. Not to say that I don't oppose Israel entirely, but I don't also support Israel entirely.
Response after being attacked by Iran. Do you now think that Israel has a right to either strike oil facilities, nuclear facilities? What's your position on that?
Well, look, let's remember how this started, and we're approaching tomorrow a tragic anniversary. Hamas terrorists murdered over 1,200 innocent Israelis, 46 Americans, took hostages. We have been clear. Israel has the right to defend itself. We've always stood in that position. We need the hostages returned, and we need to bring an end to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But again, the point is it's Iran is at the heart of this, and their proxies that bring disruption throughout the region. That's why being in the Situation Room as Vice President was, working with Israelis to repel the attack we saw this week. They tried it back in April, the same thing. And that's the point of being and boxing Iran in. President Trump tore up the nuclear deal.
Iran was broke. You didn't see Iran do shit under President Trump. Excuse me for my language.
That moved Iran closer to a nuclear weapon. He also allowed Iran to shoot down an American aircraft in international airspace.
I don't remember that.
With a tweet. And when Iranian weapons, missiles fell on U.S. troops, he called it a headache when it was traumatic brain injury. Just to be clear, we have always said we reserve the right to protect American troops, our allies in the region, and that there is consequences for Iran. So what you're seeing right now is the ability to work with our allies, the ability to make sure Iran does not further, and every administration has dealt with them for 45 years. Now it's to make sure, and there has never been a question, Israel has the right to defend itself, and we stand with them to do that. But we need to bring this to a conclusion.
Does that include a strike on Iran's nuclear or oil facility?
That's the real question, and just answer yes or no. Does Israel have a right? Should they? Vance pretty much said it's what Israel wants. If they want to do it, and every nation should have the right to defend themselves, including us at our southern border, which we send money to Israel and Ukraine, but not to the southern border. And don't get me And no one give me bullshit about the bill. The bill would have done nothing. It had so much pork in it for Israel, Ukraine. God put Americans first. You know, I was talking with an older gentleman today at church. He said back in his day, we would always put Americans before others. Nowadays, we have terrible people at the top.
Specific operations will be dealt with at the time, but being very clear on this, Iran, there's consequences for what they do. That's what's happening right now. Israel's right to defend itself is not in question.
Okay, you said in a radio interview that anti-Israel protesters were speaking out, quote, for all the right reasons. You know that some of them are carrying Hamas flags. Some of them are calling for the extermination of the Jewish state. Do you want to clarify?
I'm okay with the anti-Israel protests. I'm okay with pro-Israel protests. But what I'll say is that you're protesting on American ground. So, yeah, some of them are chanting death to America, mainly from the Palestinians. And just don't look up the dancing Jews. Don't look it up. But, yeah, Israel, a lot of these protesters, when they go out and protest, they're chanting death to Israel, death to America. A lot of these people weren't even students, actually.
Your praise for that.
Well, I'm certainly not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who understand that we have to end the humanitarian crisis.
Then you got to distinguish it.
But they understand we need to return the hostages, bring peace to the region. Look, I will always defend people's rights to First Amendment, but that's not the...
What did you say on MSNBC? Oh, yeah, First Amendment. And you don't have a guarantee to the First Amendment? Something along that line? You said that? Flip-flop?
Folks I'm talking about. Those folks are not speaking for the entire group. So I think it's very clear on this. Israel's right, as we've stood with them. Anti-Semitism has no place in this country, and Vice President Harris has been clear about that. I've been clear about it. But the ability to bring a peaceful solution and understand Israel's right to...
Oh, by the way, this rhetoric, yeah, good luck trying to get the Muslim vote. Apparently, some polls, Trump's leading the Arab American vote, even though they know his stance. We all know Trump's stance on Israel. He's pro-Israel, and yet he's still, in some polls, winning Arab Americans because they understand he is the candidate for peace. He will bring peace to the Middle East. Obviously, I'm under the belief that there will be conflicts more in Latin America that will be started under Trump, but I'm confident we can mitigate them. I'm confident because he took out ISIS in several weeks. ISIS was gone. But let's continue.
Defend itself, the return of the hostages, and Gazans' right to live in peace too is something that we're trying to get to, and that's going to take the leadership that we've seen out of Vice President Harris, being able to hold this coalition together. And again, when Iran launched their missiles this week, she's in the Situation Room. That's different. The people who are in the Situation Room with
Iran wasn't launching missiles under Trump. Iran wouldn't dare. Yes, they launched missiles at the base, but they weren't launching them towards Israel. And to be honest, if they ever, Trump was holding back. Listen, if they tried anything else, if they tried anything more, Trump would have it would have been bombs away over Tehran, which honestly, I think that's what I think they want war with Iran. I think the establishment Republicans, they want war with Iran. We were humiliated back in the 70s by Iran. Not saying the Iranians are good. They're terrible. Oh, the mullahs in Iran, terrible. Well, I'd much rather see Iran become Persia again and be returned to the Shah.
Donald Trump, like John Kelly as chief of staff, said he shouldn't be there. He's a damaged human being. His own defense secretary said he does not understand the situation, is incapable of dealing with it.
Okay.
So it's about character.
Let's focus on what your position is and the vice president's position as well.
You see, they always refer back to Trump. They always go back to Trump. My challenge is, if I were interviewing Harrison Walz, I would say, listen, the rules for this are you can't mention Trump or else we can't have this interview. I would make in the contract that you are not allowed to mention or refer to Trump. You've got to talk about yourself in a certain amount of time. If they do, but they can't because they've got TDS and also they have no actual original ideas.
I want to talk about abortion.
Someone who flip-flops on an issue just automatically out of the blue is someone who has no original ideas, usually. Now, in certain cases, maybe they've changed their opinion. Maybe that comes out of research, but you can usually tell. You get good at it.
Too, because this came up at the debate. It's been a winning argument for Democrats on many ballots, but I want to clarify what the law is there in Minnesota. Abortion Finder, a website that helps women find access, says abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months.
I feel like Vance, I've heard people say Vance could have done a bit better. I feel like he did good. Maybe he could have. But I think he did good on this. I think he won pretty much every topic. Maybe the democracy.
Months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that
This is
law
a
goes
woman's
far beyond
right
Roe v. Wade.
to make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But
look, this is
let's agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy.
So Minnesota's law is even more radical than the Roe v. Wade. Which, I mean, it's up to the state, but you still do have to have limits. You still do. It's still a human being inside the mother. You've got to have some sort of limit. You can't have this radical abortion. You can't. Like, what's the limit? Even some of my family who are pro-choice think that some of the Democrats are too radical. And, like, one of my family members who's pro-choice, I mean, she's more conservative, she's more liberal on that issue, but she even thinks that that they're out of touch on this issue.
The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her healthcare providers. The situation we have is when you don't have the ability of healthcare providers to provide that, that's where you end up with a situation like Amanda Zaworski in Texas, where they are afraid to do what's necessary. This doesn't change anything. It puts the decision back on to the woman, to the physicians, and we know that this is simply something to be brought up to be very clear. Donald Trump's asking for a nationwide abortion ban.
Wait.
No, he's not. He said that he wouldn't sign a national abortion ban. What the hell are you talking about? It's like they go back to this, like every time they say it, even though Trump said over and over again, I will not sign a national abortion ban. I will not sign a national abortion ban. It's like these people, they're like robotically programmed. Like is Tim Walz even human? Is Tim Walz even his name? What the heck is this?
He
And
has
again,
said that
we don't see this
he has
as a
said
winning
repeatedly
campaign.
that he will not sign a national abortion ban. Are you calling that just, it's a flat out lie?
Yes, of course, and Senator Vance has in the past said so too. Now look, they may see this as an election issue. We see it as a right of women to make their own bodily decisions, and that's what the states like my state have the ability
My
to put
body, my
that in.
choice. What about
States like Georgia force women to cross the border and then
well for a mask, a jab, Fauci, as some people call it? What about that? Oh, it's not. You've got to be consistent.
we have a death of Amber Thurman. So let's be very clear. Trying to cut hairs on an issue on this is not where the American public's at. They want the restoration of Roe versus Wade. Vice President Harris said she would.
No. Oh. It's better to be left up to the states, the individual states. And the only way it wouldn't is if there was an amendment, which there's never going to be an amendment, national amendment banning or allowing abortion. There will never, in this period, there can never be one. Honestly, abortion's like the issue of slavery in the 1860s, pre-Civil War, or how we perceive it really, how it's really perceived. Because if you go into the nuance, slavery is more of an economic issue. I mean, it was still a big factor in the Civil War. It was one of many factors. I've said that. This abortion, what is he even talking about? And plus, this isn't the midterms. Abortion was an issue of the midterms after Roe v. Wade was overturned. People are over that now. People are more focused on immigration, the economy, inflation. Those are the key factors. Not abortion, not democracy, not whatever the left wants to claim, not these issues.
Sign it. That's what we'll do when we're elected.
But to be clear, the Minnesota law
right
is far beyond Roe v. Wade. And about the Amber Thurman case in Georgia, her family has, and it's tragic, she is a young mother who left behind a young son. But what her family has said is it was a complication from an abortion pill that she received, and she didn't get proper care when she went to a Georgia hospital, which had multiple opportunities.
Look how confused he is. Look, he's like, what is this? He's completely stunned. This is the first time he gets, because Shan Bream is grilling him.
Opportunities to intervene there. Her own attorney, the family's attorney, says it wasn't the Georgia law, it was the hospitals. What he claims is malpractice, not treating her when she clearly showed up in distress and still had the byproducts of her pregnancy because of that rare complication from the abortion pill. So just to be clear on the Georgia law and how her family and her attorney sees it.
I think they also indicated that had she not go to North Carolina after the debate the other night, that she would have been in a better position. So look, these are the situations you're going to get into when you take this decision and put it at the hands of politicians like Donald Trump rather than women and their doctors. We trust women, we trust doctors, and we know the outcomes of that are better.
Okay, let's clarify more changes that you signed in Minnesota as well. Several things were repealed with respect to reporting infants who may have survived an abortion attempt. Language that used to be part of the statute was taken out. We'll put this on the screen so people can see. It used to require medical personnel to, quote, preserve the life and health of the born alive.
Holy crap.
Infant. That language has been repealed. It's no longer part of the law. Also struck from the law was language about reporting infants that are born alive, what treatment they receive, and whether they live or die. Why was it important to you to get that protection out of the law?
Minnesota law aligns with every other case of what physicians are required by their ethical responsibilities. And so it changed nothing other than aligning with all care that physicians provide in any circumstance for any medical case. And so it's alignment. I don't even know what he's talking about anymore. It's always been. It's the cases we've seen.
What is he talking about? I don't know what he's talking about anymore.
In Minnesota, the outcomes we get in our healthcare results are the best in the nation, and all it did was align with existing law.
But you do acknowledge it takes out the language about preserving the life of an infant who was born alive.
Every doctor has an ethical responsibility to provide what they can in each situation. That is the way the law is written now. It's the same for any person who shows up. And again, this is a distraction from the real issue here is women being forced into miscarriages, women being forced to go back home, get sepsis, potentially die, like we saw in cases in Texas, and maternal mortality rates in Texas have skyrocketed off the charts because of this. This is bad policy. Vice President and I have been very clear on this. We will restore the rights of Roe versus Wade. We will make sure women have their health care decisions. We will not put people's lives at risk because of the geography of where they live. And it will go back to the way it was before Donald Trump gleefully said, we've got the best of both worlds here. Things are wonderful. The states are handling it. It's a beautiful thing. It's not a beautiful thing to see.
No, that's how it should be. That's how it should be. That is how it should be. Listen, go back on slavery. Let's just focus on slavery. States having the right slavery before it. Yeah, you could say, oh, it radical. Listen, it was the best thing that they could figure out. Listen, it was the best thing they could figure out at the time when they were writing the Constitution, when they were drafting it. It was unfortunate that they had to kept putting it off, and then we had this war which slavery was partially the creator of. I think more after Antietam, but I could get into that in a whole different video why after Antietam the war became primarily about slavery. I think it was more about how economics, tariffs, but I think it was put in that direction more by Abraham Lincoln after the Union victory at Antietam, which allowed him to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, pretty much say we will abolish slavery, even though the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to the Confederate States and not to the Union-occupied areas of the Confederacy. Yeah, it's a whole different topic. I'm getting off on a tangent, so let's continue.
See women dying. It's not a beautiful thing to put doctors at risk of being imprisoned.
It is not. It is not to see any single woman suffer. And by the way, there's not a single state, no matter how pro-life or restrictive their laws are, that do not allow a doctor to intercede. That's true in Georgia and Texas as well. I want to turn to the economy. Our latest polling shows that 66% of Americans we talked to said that buying groceries is a, quote, major problem for them.
Yes.
And when we ask people about how they feel about the policies of this administration versus the previous, double the amount of people surveyed say that Biden-Harris policies have hurt them rather than help them and their families economically. That's in stark contrast to how they feel when asked about the Trump administration. So what would a Harris-Walz administration do different than a Biden-Harris administration when it comes to convincing people that the economy is going to get better for them, because their perception is that it's not?
Well, we saw a blockbuster jobs report this week. We saw interest rates come down, and we've also...
Yeah, those are... What I've seen is from people is those are people who are getting second and third jobs because the employment rate is going up despite the fact that the job rate is up because people are taking other jobs and people are unable to get a job.
See that Vice President Harris laying out a middle-class agenda. Look, I was in Ohio yesterday, in Cleveland, in Cincinnati, and talking about this. Folks in Ohio know that Donald Trump's policies led to 180,000 manufacturing jobs leaving. They understand when he left office, we had more people unemployed percentage-wise than the Great Depression. What Vice President Harris is talking about...
The economy was coming back before Biden got in. It was starting to recover from the pandemic. Trump has repeatedly said, I gave them a really good economy and they fucked it up. He didn't say that part, but yeah. You know what I'm
That is
saying.
making it more affordable to buy housing. And we've seen it in Minneapolis. When you have more housing stock, we've seen rates go down. We've seen more houses available. Also, the idea of price gouging. 37 states, Republican and Democratic states, have this. Corn is about $4.10 or so a bushel. That's where it's been for many years, up and down. But prices at the grocery stores have skyrocketed, corporate profits have skyrocketed, and people are paying more. So we talk about that. And then I think the fundamental difference here is Donald Trump kept his promise. He cut taxes for the wealthiest. She's talking about making sure things like a child tax credit, $6,000 child tax credit, put more money in people's pocket, making sure that we're able to buy those.
You're not going to have enough
baby
money
formula.
under the Harris Walz administration. God forbid they get elected. If these two get elected, you're not going to have enough money to buy a house, let alone have a child, starve family. You can kiss it goodbye. You can kiss it goodbye.
Get started, and she's simply asking that we can pay for it by asking those at the top to pay their fair share. This is a fundamental difference in approaches to it, and we're seeing it working. We're seeing economists talk about Donald Trump's proposal to add a 20.
Just because have the label they're economists doesn't mean they're experts. There's lots of other people that could explain this better than me.
percent sales tax will cost $4,000.
Okay.
That's everybody. That's not me saying it.
And just to note, that is a tariff, which, by the way, this administration not only kept most of the Trump tariffs, but they added their own as well. So that's got to be part of the conversation. I want to talk a little bit about your record as governor, because it elucidates for people how.
Should have grilled him a bit more. I feel like she should have on this issue, because this is such an easy issue. But
you may serve is whether you end up being the president. You'll be one heartbeat away. Should your ticket be successful. Wall Street Journal says this after you were chosen to join the ticket. As the Democratic governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz signed into law initiatives allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's licenses, qualify for free tuition at state universities.
You get better services from the government if you're illegal in this country than if you're an actual citizen. Just look in North Carolina. $750 for what? For the hurricane relief. Your house it got swept away during the hurricane. Here you go. Here's $750 from Uncle Sam. And big fuck you. Israel, Ukraine, illegal immigrant. And on Friday's video, I forgot to mention Maui, I think. Hey, that's another community that the Biden-Harris administration has abandoned. And if something like that happened again, don't even expect her to show up. Don't even expect her to show up. You're lucky that Biden at least was put under pressure to show up. He didn't go out of the kindness of his heart. He did it. His handlers were pressuring him to.
And enroll in the state's free health care program for low-income residents. Are those not magnets to draw people here, many times on dangerous journeys for themselves? And why should your taxpayers in Minnesota or across the states pay for those programs?
Well, that's not the vice president's position, but I will say this. Minnesota ranks as a top 5 business state.
She wasn't asking about the vice president's position. She was asking about your position. You, as the vice presidential nominee, if you guys are elected and, God forbid, something happens to Kamala. So God forbid they get elected, but also God forbid something happens to her. And you're the president. As President Walz, what would you do for this issue?
We rank as a top 3 state for children living, and we're the top state for healthcare access. I would also add this. We also have some of the safest roads. Look, the vice president has made it clear that she has policies that make a difference. Her border policies are the most strongest, the fairest we've seen. It's the bill that...
Her border policy, oh my God. What the fuck are you talking about? The border is wide open. The Border Patrol Union hates Harris. They hate Biden-Harris. They don't like her. Her policies have only destroy the border. Look at Aurora, Colorado, Springfield, Ohio, all these communities in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. How is this helping? How is she helping? She's not.
Or you know, a lot of people, including your own party, would not join that statement. There are millions of people who have come here over the last few years that, you know, they see this as an open border.
He looks like a fish.
Well,
he looks like
we
a
have
fish.
policy. Donald Trump sees it as a political. Look, James Langford in Oklahoma, the Border Patrol agents.
This. You know, Langford actually, when actually ended up voting against the bill, the guy who they say sponsored it, he went against it because he was probably pressured by the Senate Republicans because of how bad it was. It was a bad bill.
Wall Street Journal, the Chamber of Commerce, all said pass this legislation. You have to have Congress to authorize 1,500 new border agents. You have to have Congress to authorize DOJ.
Listen, you don't need a border. Just close the damn border. And you see, apparently, the Biden administration, they're apparently now starting to act just a couple weeks before the election. Yeah, I don't think that's going to help them. I think they've already doomed their chances. And I think the MAGA rally, the Trump rally in Butler last night, that's going to seal it for Pennsylvania. He went up in Poly Markets after this interview. We could check. Okay, because I think Trump probably got the election secured. Obviously, like I said, don't get overconfident, but we'll continue.
Adjudications on these asylum claims. Those are things that would actually work. Donald Trump told us for 4 years he would deal with this. He didn't. He didn't build his wall 2%. Mexico didn't pay.
Yes, he did. And yes, Mexico did.
This is a real bill that has bipartisan support. It has
bipartisan. Give me a break.
It's the experts on board, and it starts to tackle these issues. And we don't have to resort to demonizing people. We don't have to resort to making up or crafting stories.
Is a lot of these people that are coming over there, they can't assimilate into our culture. Look at Europe. Look how much when they take in all these undocumented immigrants, and it's destroyed. They want to create voter blocks like they're creating in Europe.
Senator Vance said he did. Those things were not happening in Springfield, but it doesn't mean that we can't pass a piece of legislation to strengthen our border. That's what Kamala Harris is talking about.
Well,
She's talking
Governor,
about solving the problem.
That piece of legislation does include the wall that you guys have been so, you've disparaged that. I mean, the vice president has as well. So I don't know if she really intends to move forward with that. But it was negotiated by 3 or 4 senators, and many Republicans came out against it long before President Trump indicated he didn't like it either. Listen, before we go.
Wow, Shannon Bream.
Because I wish that we had a full hour. I want to give you a chance, because you called yourself a knucklehead this week, to talk about some of your misstatements. Yes. You've modified your story or explained that you misspoke about things involving your military rank, about carrying a weapon in war, your 1995 DUI arrest, using IVF to have your beautiful children, Gus and Hope, being in Hong Kong and China in the summer of 1989 during the Tiananmen events. A lot of people would say they couldn't get away with saying, I'm just too passionate, my grammar's not right.
What about the people he's friends with? They said he was friends with. Obviously that, he should have just said that, hey, I misspoke. Listen, but he he's dragging himself down. He's dragging the ticket down.
Knucklehead. What do you say to the American people who think, I don't know that I can trust this guy with all those modifications to be the potential commander-in-chief of this country?
Yeah, well, I think they heard me. They heard me the other night speaking passionately about gun violence and misspeaking. And I got to be honest with you, Shannon, I don't think people care whether I used IUI or IVF when we talk about this. What they understand is Donald Trump would resist those things.
God. It's always Donald Trump. Oh, and by the way, Donald Trump is for IVF. So please, Shannon Bream, fact check him.
I speak passionately. I had an entire career, decades before I was in public office.
He looks
They
like
know, and I'm very
Gorbachev
proud
from
of
this
my
angle.
24 years in service and my record. I have never
It's like
disparaged
Biden
someone
and
else in this,
Gorbachev.
but I know that's not what Donald Trump does. They disparage everyone. The personal attacks. I will own up when I misspeak. I will own up when I make a mistake. Let's be very clear. On that debate stage the other night, I asked one very simple question, and Senator Vance would not acknowledge that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. I think they're probably far more concerned with that than my wife and I used IUI to have our child, and that Donald Trump would restrict that. So I think folks know.
Americans aren't concerned with that. That's correct, but they're long past that. They're long past that. They're more concerned about the economy, the border, inflation. They're more concerned with that. They're not concerned with this, but you know what about the they're concerned about? They're concerned about if you're going to be honest. And by your record, you do not seem honest.
Constituents here in Minnesota have elected me 8 times. They know where I'm at, and I'm proud to be on the ticket, and we'll deliver just like we have here in Minnesota.
Right. And if we're going to deal in truth, both the president, the former president, and his nominee have said that they are very supportive of IVF. We are glad you have your precious family. We thank you for serving in uniform and your years and decades as a teacher. My mom was too. I know it's really hard work and sometimes very thankless. So, Governor.
One of my professors actually said that he commends Walz for teaching. Forgot what grade he taught. It was a high school, wasn't it? But they can be rowdy. They can definitely be rowdy.
Governor, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Shannon.
God, that did not look good. And I'll pull up the poly markets. We've been going for a while. Oh, but poly market in Trump just went up on but it went down earlier. Believe it was at like 57. Let's see, Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin, Michigan. I think a lot of these states are getting much closer. Yeah, but what do you think? Did you think Tim Walz did a good job? Do you think he got grilled? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.